Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home. Welcome everybody to the Heal Your Hunger Show. So happy to have you here. It is a great day to be alive, and I have an awesome guest today. Can't wait for you to hear him. But first, make sure you go over to the Heal Your Hunger tribe on Facebook. I want you to jump over there so you can join the conversation, be a part of the Facebook Lives that I do over there with amazing guests and special events that we have, and also just to get support. You know, nobody can do this alone, so we want you to transform your relationship with food with the support of other emotional eaters. It makes it so much easier. So go to Facebook and go to type in Heal Your Hunger Tribe, and then let's get you going on that. Now, for my guest, I'm so excited. This guy is awesome. Okay, cat out of the bag. He's my husband. So, Roy Nelson is a spiritual healer, and he is responsible, him and God are responsible for my healing. So I've been incredibly blessed by him and all that he's taught me and everything that I talk about on this show and everywhere else. I'd say most of it comes directly from him. And then, of course, from the inspiration I get just from the work that we've done together. So, but he's definitely inspired everything that I do. And I'm so, so grateful that I know him. He's worked with people all around the globe who struggle with food and weight. So he has a deep dive program that we'll talk about for anybody who is like ready now to have a total transformation in their lives. Like a complete transformation of every aspect of their lives. That's what he specializes in. So we'll get into that. His website is roynelsonhealing.com. Welcome, Roy.
Oh, thank you so much, Tricia. Thank you. What an inspiration you are, sweetheart. God bless you. You've been doing this thing pushing 31 years now.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Whoa.
Pretty crazy.
Who would have thunk it?
Not me.
Not me?
Not me. So, yeah, you're pretty cool, Roy. I really dig you. But let's talk about...
So are you, baby.
Thank you. Let's talk about the amazing things. We'll start your story. Tell us kind of where you come from and what brought you to do this work.
Well, I started off in a really tough place with a lot of tough people in a very tough area, and I wasn't very tough. So, I almost died at birth and then kind of went downhill from there, actually. But really did almost suffocate at birth. And my fear was the driving force in my life forever. I mean, like always. And for good reason, I guess, when you almost die at birth. And then at the same time, I was always in fear of being hurt in violence. I lived in violence. I would, around a lot of violent people, in an alcoholic home, and violent people, a lot of violent people. And I was always afraid. And then, of course, poverty and one thing and another. I worked from the time I was a little kid, making a few bucks here and there. One thing and another, worked after school and on the weekends. And then, of course, later after I left school, and then I was in the Army, and then, got married very young and had children. And one thing and another is always in over my head. I was ill-equipped for the life I had created. And so ultimately, I started, after I got out of the Army, kind of tough to begin with, but then I started making money, and then it was all about getting stuff, and making myself look like I was more than I was, right? Always pretending to be something I wasn't, right? Always going to try to impress them. Somebody said they spent money they didn't have to buy things they didn't want to impress people they didn't like. Right? So I was always trying to affect what I thought people were thinking of me, and of course they weren't thinking of me. But who would have known? So in my head they were. And so ultimately I started making, I had a lot of phobias and started having some severe phobias after a little while there, and I started making the rounds of psychiatrists for the anxiety and the phobias and the panic attacks. And of course it just got worse because I was looking for an intellectual solution to a spiritual problem. And so ultimately, after about 4.5 years of that, I eventually came to a place where I was going to have to consider a spiritual solution. And I always thought out there in that wilderness how comforting it would be if only I could believe in God, but I didn't know any way I could believe because I had so much religious insanity from my childhood that I was hoping there was no God, because if there was a God, based on what I'd heard about God, I was in serious trouble. But what happens is when you get desperate enough, you become open to things you wouldn't otherwise be open to. When you're dying, you become open to things, and that's where I was. And I was morbidly obese. I was, completely dependent on alcohol. Had a bag of pills. I didn't like pills, but had a bag of pills that the psychiatrist prescribed. And, there was a time I used to hire a doctor or registered nurse to travel with me to give me IVs of Valium or sodium pentothal if the terror got too bad. Smoked cigarettes, drove big cars, chased fast women, anything to get relief from me, anything to keep them having to be with me. And, my experiences going in, a lot of those things helped. They helped me get through. And ultimately it took more and more and more of those things, and ultimately all of those things combined wouldn't keep the terror at bay, and the guilt and the remorse and the self-hatred. So that's when I eventually turned to a spiritual solution, and then it's been a process of unlearning.
So, okay, let's stop there.
Okay.
Before we go into the unlearning part, because that's a big subject.
True.
What was the turning point for you? Like you're going down. Tell us about that moment where things turned around.
Well, at that time, there were some people running a religious campaign. And, like I said, I didn't think much of it till when you get desperate, you become open to things otherwise you wouldn't be open to. I called them. They were nice. They sent me something in the mail, a little pamphlet in the mail. Didn't think much of it until the night I hit bottom. That dark night of the soul. And there had been many dark nights of the soul. But that was the one that I reached over in the nightstand and picked up the little pamphlet, and it said to the effect, even if you don't believe, if you ask for help, you'll be helped anyway. Even if you don't believe in God, if you have trouble with God, whatever it is, if you ask God for help, God will help you. It comes to do with the right attitude at the right time, and when you're desperate and you're open and receptive. And I said that famous alcoholic addict prayer, "Oh dear God, please help me." And I cried like a baby. And I had a peace that came over me that night like I'd never experienced before in my entire life. Ever. I apologized to God, I apologized to Jesus, I apologized whatever, for that I had an attitude, right? See, it's an attitude. See, the thing is, the attitude and action is what got me to the depths of hell. And the same way you got yourself into the hell, the way you dig your way out is attitude and action. I didn't get to the bottom from any one great, big, terrible thing I had done. It was a combination of simple little errors in judgment repeated over time, compounded through the years. That's how I got to the bottom. And the same way you dig your way out is one little simple right action, right attitude, one step, one day at a time that you move forward. And and this is, how it began. And I spent a number of years looking for people who could help me. And I found some people. I found a lot of people helped me a little bit, and a few people helped me a lot, but I could never find anyone that had all I needed, or any group or, teaching or whatever that had all I needed. So what I had to do is gather pieces from various teachings, various people, various philosophies and bring it into my life, incorporate what I could use, implement what I could use, and then discard what I couldn't use. And that became what my program is. And then eventually I realized I needed to start helping other people. And initially I didn't think I had anything of a spiritual nature to offer, so I'd do something physical. I'd pick up a hitchhiker, give them a ride, or I'd help somebody with their bags, or whatever it might be that I could do that I saw was an opportunity to be helpful. And then eventually I started being asked to speak. And in fact, that's how I met Tricia.
That's right.
That's how I met Tricia.
That's right.
You know, and I've been asked to speak here and there once in a while, and then more and more, and then eventually people started coming to me wanting my help. And like I said, I didn't really think I had anything to offer, but I was willing to try. And then to my amazement, people started getting results. And then I became amazed. And then, of course, the thing is, I saw people getting better, and then I got hooked on it. You know what I mean? It's amazing, you know? My God, that something, you know, somebody had been as far out there as I had been, that Sweet Spirit would start using me to help other people. Oh my God, you know, it was so awesome. And so I've been doing this work for many, many years. And, Tricia actually, when she came and she saw it and she got help and she wanted to be part of it, and she became my best advocate. She was out there. In fact, most of the people who have come to me since Tricia came have come through Tricia, who hearing Tricia speak or being inspired by Tricia, you know. And we have so many success stories of people who were inspired by Tricia because she's such an angel to come and get some help for themselves. And then now, of course, Tricia is reaching out to the world and doing her own outreach. So it's just unbelievable to be a part of this whole thing. And thank you so much for having me on your program, Trish. I'm so honored.
Of course. So you're a spiritual healer. And I know you don't call yourself that, but that's what I call you and the other people. So, you know, it's kind of an interesting label because it's kind of a double entendre. Like there's you're healing, you're a spiritual healer, so you are a healer, and Spirit is working through you to heal. But you're also helping people heal their relationship with Spirit. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about the relationship with Spirit? Like, or what you've been doing this a long time, people with addictions, you know, of all different kinds, you know, we have found over the years that there's a brokenness there. There's a break in that relationship with Spirit.
Yeah, well, it's true. You know, what happens, of course, I was out there, I was very into the God idea and religion when I was a little kid. In fact, I was a little tiny kid, and I went to try to get baptized, and they thought I was too young, and blah, blah, blah. You know, very sweet people, good people. But then as the illness catches hold of you, it takes you further and further and further away from all of that. And then, of course, I realized that much of what I learned in my early childhood was of a vengeful, punishing God. And of course, that was very scary, particularly to a sensitive soul like I was, and I am, you know. But what I found, it's actually easier to help people who think they don't believe in God than it is to help people who think they do believe in God, because oftentimes people with a religious background or who are heavy into the God idea or religion or whatever have a lot of pride around their beliefs or the idea they know they get this thing down and this and that and whatever. And the important thing to understand, and of course, my experience is it doesn't matter if you believe in God or don't believe in God, because a friend of mine used to say it's okay if you have trouble with God, God doesn't have any trouble with you. And so the nice thing about it is it doesn't matter where you are, because if you experience what I'm talking about, you'll have a shift in your consciousness, a spiritual awakening. So you may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now you will begin to have a spiritual experience. And that's what will expel the cravings for excess food or for obsession with your body, whether you're bulimic or anorexic or obese or morbidly obese. These are all symptoms of the same condition. And of course, any other addiction as well. Does whatever the other addictions, and nobody just has one. Because if you have the addictive personality, then it's all the above.
Right.
That's my experience.
Why stop at one?
Well, one is never enough, and even one addiction is not enough,
No.
right? Because
we're addicted.
yeah,
Let's have another addiction.
And of course, all of these, so it doesn't really matter what a person perceives themselves to be suffering from, even though one is maybe more in their face. The bottom line is everything on the outside is a manifestation of what's on the inside. And so what I'm really about is helping people feel safe enough to face themselves so that they can get honest with themselves about how they really feel about themselves, about God, about their lives, about the people and the circumstances in their lives, versus going through life pretending. See, the turmoil comes from feeling one way and pretending you feel another way, because you're living a whole bunch of lies, maybe not intentionally, but out of fear. See, people aren't dishonest with themselves because they're bad. People are dishonest with themselves because they're afraid if they get honest, they're going to make changes, right? And people are afraid of change. But I'm telling you, my experience is nothing but good can come from facing yourselves and your lives. And so anyway, that's what happens. I was just thinking about Tricia. When you came, you hated this one, you hated that one. Now you love the ones you hated. It's like Uncle Paul, right? All of a sudden you
Describe who Uncle Paul is.
St. Paul, the apostle. He was basically he says in his writings that now he loves the one that he hated, and he hates and what I mean.
Does he hate the ones he used to
love?
No,
I don't remember he said that, but no, I just mean that it's
because that's not necessarily
no,
where we're going.
No, I don't mean it that way. He didn't say that, but just you be able to, when you Dr. Dyer said when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the way it is. It's really a change in perspective, change in perception. So you see things and you see yourself differently. You see everything differently when you wake up. And essentially we're going through life asleep, dreaming that we're awake.
Yeah.
Right? And so what we can do here is actually wake up. And then all your troubles start to fall away, because all your troubles are symptoms. Everything on the outside is a symptom of what's on the inside. The whole problem lies deep within the soul, in the psyche, in the heart, in the subconscious mind. Master computer. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's where it has to be defragged, right?
Yeah.
That's where it has to be excavated. So what we do is ultimately excavate everything that isn't love. Mm. And then instead of being filled with fear and resentment and envy and all this and that and something else, we're going to be filled with love.
One of the most amazing things about you, Roy, and that I obviously noticed very quickly, and that you promised, actually, when I first met you, is that when you work with people, their compulsion to overeat is healed. Like, it's healed instantaneously. And that is something that I don't know anybody on the planet who can produce that result, okay? Like, I have watched over and over people who were, like, just completely flattened by this condition of overeating, food addiction, compelled, just like I have been, compelled to eat. Binge eater, just like eat till you feel disgusting and sick, that when somebody humbles themselves and they come, they ask you for help and you work with them, sometimes within just a few hours, that compulsion is lifted. And it's like, I remember Vicki described it as she went up the stairs to her home after meeting with you and opened up the refrigerator just out of habit, as she'd always done. And she had no desire to eat anything. She just looked at the food, and there was no connection there. So this is an incredible, incredible thing that happens, and I feel like we should shout it from the rooftops. People can literally have their compulsion and obsession to overeat removed instantaneously, and that's from being in your presence. You have a aura, you have a spiritual presence, energy, juju, whatever you call it, and then just the way you work with people. So can you describe that a little bit?
Well, I was just thinking, and of course here we're talking about emotional eating and overeating and that type of thing, or undereating or whatever, but, we've seen that happen with heroin.
Yeah,
We've seen it happen. We've seen it happen with Vicodin addiction.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it happen with so many things. But and frankly, the overeating problem is the most difficult to overcome. Because, but the nice thing about it is, this sweet spirit deep within you doesn't care which addiction you're suffering from. But if you're suffering from the overeating addiction, the nice, wonderful thing is to see. I was completely driven by overeating my entire out for always, and to have that lifted, to me was, it hurts. Overeating hurts so bad.
Yep.
And so many people are not even aware about how badly they're hurting. And they're numbing themselves out in so many other ways. But, man, to have that compulsion to overeat removed is unbelievable. It's just, oh my God, the peace that comes from that. And it's sweet spirit. It's all grace. It's not, it's really the sweet spirit within me touching the sweet spirit within the other person that makes that possible. And, somehow, I guess because I've been to the depths of hell and I've been healed, sweet spirit can work through me that way. I don't take credit for it, but it is a miraculous. It's a wonderful thing to see.
Yeah.
And it can happen for anyone who comes. That's the nice thing. It's not matter. It's not selective, and it'll happen for anybody who will open their heart to me.
Now, everybody would like to have that result, obviously, but not everybody can have it. So can you talk about what the kind of commitment it takes to have that? Because obviously everybody be lining up around the corner for that, but
Right.
But it does take somebody being pretty damn serious about wanting that. And can you talk about that?
Well, exactly. That's the one thing. So I did this work for free for 30 years, and I never intended to charge anybody a dime for what I do, because it's sweet spirit working through me. But we've spent millions of dollars in outreach, and Tricia's devoted her life and everything else to doing this work. And unless people are anchored, seriously anchored, they're not going to go the distance. And so what Tricia talked about, having the compulsion removed, yes, it can be removed immediately. But unless a person continues to go to do the work and go deeper and make the commitment, it's not going to stay gone, because there's no cure for this condition. You can be healed, but there's no cure. So what I do is initially I commit to a 28-day program with people face to face here in Los Angeles. Okay, now you're not going to be done in 28 days. So I would recommend a minimum.
That's sort of like a test period.
Yeah.
Their lives can be transformed in 28 days, but then there's more.
It will be transformed, but it won't stay transformed if they don't continue. So I would recommend a minimum of a year. Okay. But you'll be committing for 28 days. I'll be committing for 28 days. And if you have a good attitude at the end of that and willing to continue to work and do the work, have a good attitude and take it seriously, then I will take you seriously.
So we're talking about somebody coming here, like ideally for a year,
Yeah.
staying here in Los Angeles, Airbnb or renting a place or whatever.
Whatever
So a lot of people are going to be like, hell no, I'm not doing that. But that's because they think a diet will fix them.
Right.
Right? But these, we're talking about somebody who can't stop eating and has been in that position for decades and probably has not added up the amount of money they've spent, the amount of opportunities they've lost, the relationships they've damaged or ruined because of their love and addiction to food. So, I think that's the bummer part of, or tragic part about food as an addiction is, our parents aren't calling around looking for a place for us to go, a treatment center or whatever, because it's just food. It's a donut, it's a Twinkie, it's, a bag of chips, and it just doesn't seem serious. Sure, if you're anorexic and you're 65 pounds, then let's call the treatment centers. But if you're an overeater, I mean, it's like we joke about it.
Right.
But it's not a laughing matter if you live in one of our bodies and we're in that hell. In the midst of emotional eating and food addiction, it is dark. It is dark. It is, I was suicidal.
Me too.
I didn't want to live.
Yep.
It's not about not fitting into my bikini.
Right. Exactly.
It's like I don't want to be alive.
That's so true. It hurts. It
Yeah.
really, really hurts.
So I just want to kind of bring that perspective to this when somebody's balking at the idea. What you do is you don't mess around. You work with people who are serious. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired, but they're not just sick and tired of like they're not just saying it. Like they're ready to change their lives. And so that's why you only work with one person at a time. You're looking for those particular people who are willing to do whatever it takes to change their lives.
Well, that's what it takes, because otherwise, otherwise it just it's not going to work. And because the other thing is too, you see, if people come in and have the obsession, compulsion removed, then the most natural thing in the world is think they're done. They think they're cured, right? And this happens so often that people think, oh well, I don't even feel like overeating, and so because it is lifted immediately. But if you don't continue to go deeper, it'll come back, and then you blame me, it didn't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but we're talking about a lifetime condition that we're looking to turn around here.
Exactly.
And it has nothing to do with food.
Nothing.
So the work that you do, and to me, it's just grace that somebody can be relieved of the compulsion, because then somebody gets to look at their real problem.
Right.
And that was true for me.
Yeah.
I didn't realize my whole life had to be examined and changed.
Right. Very true.
So that's really the work that you're doing.
Yeah. And it's not, it's not really, the thing is, it's not me telling you what's wrong with your life. It'll become obvious to you. If you put down the food by the grace of God, and I say God, I'm talking about the sweet spirit deep within you. That's the only thing that can heal you. But when you're relieved of the drive to overeat or whatever else, then you'll start seeing your life as it actually is. And then if you decide to do something about that, that's when your life will start getting better. Yeah. But it's really all about everything we're talking about doing is waking up. Not making you something you aren't already, but helping you become aware and waking up to who and what you actually are. But that's how we can get better. Pretending to be something we aren't, we're never going to become that. Right? But if we face the fact that we are what we are, then we can become virtually anything.
Sweet. Any other, well, let me ask you, are we ready to wrap up here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, go ahead.
Well, I have a final question, but if you had something you want to say.
No, go ahead.
What is your deepest hunger?
I want everybody who has this condition to have the opportunity to be free. Now, I know there's most of the people who have this condition I will never be able to reach. But if you do have this condition, or even if you don't, if you know somebody who does, you see, the thing is, you don't try to figure out whether they would be interested or not. And don't go tackle them and tell them you're a compulsive overeater or you're a fat or you got to do something. Tell them about the website. Tell them about this interview. Let them discover for themselves, if they might be open to getting some help and be willing to do what they need to do to get better. Because I was out there thinking there was no hope for me, thinking I was going to die out there. And I was a young man, but I was dying from this illness and had no idea that there was anything that could be done. That's the one I'm looking for, the one that would be open to doing whatever they need to do to get better. Because if they are, then there's a solution. All by the sweet Spirit, all the grace of God. It's all grace.
Roy, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for sharing you and who you are with the world. And with me, of course.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you for having me. I so appreciate you. Such an angel. God bless you.
God bless you. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Make sure to go to the Facebook group, the Heal Your Hunger Tribe. Let us know how you enjoyed the show. And if it brought stuff up for you, that's Roy's job. That's what he does. He comforts you when you're afflicted, and he afflicts you when you're comfortable. He's done it to me over 1 million times. Okay, thanks so much, Roy. Love you.
Thank you, darling. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit healyourhunger.com.